The AI Seoul Summit, hosted by South Korea and Britain, kicks off this evening to look for better uses of the technology for humanity. Household debt fell in the first quarter for the first time in a year amid fewer housing transactions and high borrowing costs. The International Criminal Court seeks arrest warrants for the leaders of Israel and Hamas on war crime charges. Both sides have strongly condemned the move by the court. It's May 21st, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon. We start with a global conversation on one of the technologies that affect many people around the world these days. The AI Seoul Summit kicks off this evening with a virtual leaders session co-chaired by President Yoon and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Dong-woon has the details.
The leaders of South Korea and Britain are leading the global conversation on how artificial intelligence should be governed across the world to ensure that digital progress changes lives for the better. Yoon and Rishi Sunak on Tuesday evening's Seoul time are co-hosting the AI Seoul Summit, launching the virtual top-level talks where the leaders of the Group of 7 nations, Singapore and Australia, have been invited to participate, along with the heads of international organizations and global tech firms like Samsung, Amazon, Google and OpenAI. The AI Seoul Summit is a follow-up to the AI Safety Summit held in the UK's Bletchley Park last year, which saw a world-first agreement between governments to jointly address the risks posed by the fast-evolving technology. This year, the focus will expand to measures to promote innovation, as well as the safety and inclusion of diverse social groups and the Global South.
Participants will hold a balanced discussion on not only the risks posed by AI, but also its positive aspects and how AI can contribute to humanity.
Ahead of the summit, Yoon and Sunak on Monday published a joint op-ed emphasizing the need for standards on AI to harness its full potential to tackle global challenges such as poverty and climate change and prevent a global race to the bottom. President Yoon, beginning with his New York initiative in 2022, has actively promoted global efforts to form standards on advancing digital innovation for the benefit of humanity, while expanding access and rights to gain from technology.
Korea is a powerhouse for AI memory chips, but the UK is third in the world in AI, so we have really advanced AI capabilities. So we have really complementing strengths there. But what's most important is that the UK and Korea are like-minded partners with shared values. So it's really important for us to work together to ensure that technologies are developed, governed and deployed in ways that uphold democratic values and protect human rights. Because it's only when we get that right can we really harness safely the potential of these technologies, which can help us solve global challenges like climate change. But we have to get...
A South Korean presidential official said, while China hasn't been invited to the Leaders' Summit, it has agreed to participate in a ministerial meeting, noting that Beijing did not take part in the more sensitive discussions last year. The official said while many countries agree on the need for AI norms, there are some differences in their approaches given their different forms of governance. These contrasts will likely be discussed in detail during the summit. The Leaders' Summit will be followed by an in-person ministerial conference on Wednesday, alongside the AI Global Forum in Seoul, to expand the conversation to wider sectors of society. Oh Dong-woon, Arirang News.
Following the AI Seoul Summit taking place, we delve a bit deeper into the use of it. What are its benefits and, on the other hand, drawbacks? Our An Sung-jin takes a closer look.
Artificial intelligence has been around for a while. Some believe that the use of AI can help them save time and allow them to focus on more important things.
The tasks you enjoy doing, do those. The tasks you don't enjoy doing, find a way to get AI to help you.
I think AI will be used even more in the future. It can help with things like research, tasks that are a bit tedious.
According to Microsoft's latest report, 3 out of 4 people use AI in their work. In Korea, it's nearly 73%. AI is no longer seen as a technological disruption, but rather a force of transformation. One expert says that our use of AI, as well as the problems that derive from it, are inevitable.
One is social innovation, and the other is an increase in productivity. That's why we use AI. It's good at things that humans were previously unable to do.
However, as AI becomes more sophisticated and widespread, danger follows, such as deepfakes, loss of jobs, and privacy violation issues. The same expert added that as the use of AI accelerates, social consensus is needed to regulate it.
There is a need for an international organization that can control the use of it, which establishes a social conservancy control for AI.
Another expert agrees and also cautions how it's not merely about creating regulations.
The easy answer is we write the law or the regulation to target the appropriate part of AI. But I think the better answer, the more complex, the key is making sure that the regulation is appropriately scoped.
Our use of AI is only going to increase as it becomes woven into the fabric of our lives. But guidance and regulations are needed for its proper integration into our daily lives. 한성진, Arirang News.
Seoul and Washington have begun a second round of negotiations on sharing the cost of stationing American troops in Korea. The two sides will discuss the issue for 3 days until Thursday here in Seoul. Pei Yun-ji with the details.
A bus carrying South Korean delegates pulls up at a building in central Seoul on Tuesday morning. U.S. officials were also seen entering. They're there for 3 days of defense cost-sharing talks, led by South Korea's chief negotiator from the Foreign Ministry, Lee Tae-woo, and his American counterpart, Linda Specht, from the U.S. State Department. The meeting will be focused on how much South Korea will shoulder to maintain the more than 28,000 U.S. Forces Korea service members, starting in 2026. The two sides held their first round of talks in Hawaii last month, earlier than expected in an apparent move to avoid any possible fallout from the re-election of former U.S. President Donald Trump in November. Trump recently questioned the need for U.S. troops to defend a, quote, wealthy country like Korea, suggesting Washington could withdraw its troops if Seoul does not pay more to support them. The current deal signed in 2021 is set to expire at the end of 2025. South Korea agreed to raise the funding by 13.9% and pay around 1.18 trillion Korean won, or about $1 billion US. Since 1991, South Korea and the U.S. have signed agreements on this issue 11 times, with negotiations taking between 6 months and a year and a half. There will likely be several more rounds of talks before the two countries are able to reach an agreement. 배은지, Arirang News.
South Korea has received an overall positive assessment from OECD members for the country's extended efforts to help developing countries through its aid policy. Choi Min-jung explains.
South Korea is well on its way to increasing its influence and presence in the international community. The OECD's Development Assistance Committee on Tuesday credited South Korea's development cooperation efforts in a peer review held once every 5 to 6 years. It said South Korea is at a pivotal juncture as it rapidly scales up official development assistance and assumes more global responsibility. The latest report praised the country's steady increase in the ODA budget and the diversification of assistance. South Korea's ODA budget for this year is at a record high of 6.3 trillion won, equal to some $4.6 billion US. This is a 31% increase from the previous year. Deputy Director of the Office for Government Policy Coordination, Park Gu-yeon, said the hike comes in line with the country's efforts to fulfill its responsibilities as a global pivotal state in the international community. The peer review provides a set of recommendations for Korea to strengthen strategic partnerships with partners, such as increasing the number of qualified staff working in development across government and delegating more authority to partner country offices. South Korea has gradually increased its ODA budget since joining the committee in 2010. The country ranked 14th among 31 member countries in terms of ODA size in 2023. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The International Criminal Court is seeking arrest warrants for the leaders of Israel and Hamas on war crime charges. Both sides are strongly protesting. Yoon has more.
With thousands of civilians dead from the war in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, the International Criminal Court is now seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas's leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar. According to the ICC's Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan on Monday, the court is seeking warrants for both on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity over the October 7th attacks on Israel and the subsequent war in Gaza.
As well as crimes against humanity of extermination and/or murder, persecution, and allegations of crimes of committing other inhumane acts.
The warrant also includes Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and two other Hamas leaders, Mohammed Diab Ibrahim al-Masri and Ismail Haniyeh. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slammed the court's decision, calling it absurd and deceitful, adding that the move was meant to target the entire state of Israel.
It is aimed against the IDF soldiers who are fighting with the utmost bravery against the vile murderers of Hamas who attacked us with horrendous brutality on October 7th.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden also criticized the ICC's decision, calling it outrageous that it's seeking to arrest Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders. He stressed that there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Hamas, too, has condemned the ICC. In a statement, Hamas separately denounced what it described as attempts to equate the victim with the executioner. Experts say that while it's unlikely that the Israeli and Hamas leaders will actually face prosecution, the arrest warrant could make it difficult for them to travel overseas, while a trial in court would be especially embarrassing for the Israeli government. Yoon, Arirang News.
Following a Marine's death during a search and rescue operation last year, the opposition parties have claimed the government pressured the military's investigation to alter a list of charges to be drawn up and recently passed a special investigation bill. As expected, President Yoon vetoed the bill. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
As anticipated, President Yoon on Tuesday vetoed a special investigation bill to look into whether the government interfered with the military's investigation into a young Marine's death last year. Among several reasons the presidential office gave was that the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea railroaded the bill.
The special prosecutor bill, railroaded by the opposition party, destroys the precious constitutional tradition that both the ruling and opposition parties have upheld for decades. Furthermore, under the principle of the separation of powers, the president's appointment authority for the special prosecutor must come with a guarantee that's substantial.
In passing the bill, the DP insisted that the key issue at stake was finding out whether the government, especially someone at the presidential office, pressured the preliminary investigation by the military so that the commander of the fallen Marines division be left off the list of suspects being transferred to the police. Amid a partisan backlash, President Yoon had already hinted at vetoing the bill, saying there were ongoing investigations by the police and the Corruption Investigations Office, and if those results did not satisfy the public, he would then call for a special probe himself. In response, the major opposition party and civic organizations gathered together to condemn President Yoon's decision, saying that the majority of citizens are calling for this special probe.
The people of our country will join forces with our opposition party to judge the unilateral action and arrogance of the Yoon Suk-yeol administration to ensure we override this veto of the special probe bill.
Meanwhile, the ruling People Power Party agreed with the president's decision, noting that the DP's push for a special council bill was without doubt a political move. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The National Assembly on Tuesday adopted a confirmation hearing report on Oh Dong-woon, the nominee to head the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. The rival members of the Assembly's Legislation and Judiciary Committee reached a bipartisan agreement over the adoption of the report. The main opposition Democratic Party, which had questioned Oh's suitability throughout the process due to a series of allegations, including one of being behind an unlawful transfer of assets to his daughter, said it came to the decision because he had spoken of his willingness to investigate anyone according to principles. The ruling People Power Party evaluated Oh as qualified for the post, saying there were no critical concerns about his eligibility. He is expected to be inaugurated quickly after an official appointment by the president, filling a 4-month gap in the post left empty since the former chief's term ended. Oh is a lawyer who became a judge in 1998 and has served as a presiding judge in several district courts. Household debt fell in the first quarter for the first time in a year amid fewer housing transactions and high borrowing costs. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun explains.
Household debt fell for the first time in a year in South Korea amid high borrowing costs and the sluggish real estate market. According to preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, outstanding household credit in the first quarter of the year fell by 0.1%, some 2.5 trillion Korean won or over $1.8 billion compared to the previous quarter. As a result, it stood at over $1.3 trillion by the end of March. Household credit is an umbrella term for household debt that combines loans from banks and other financial institutions with merchandise credit, including credit card bills that have not been paid off. This is the first time since this period last year that this figure has logged an on-quarter decline, with household credit having increased from the second quarter of last year. Looking at household loans alone, the figure fell by around $146 million on quarter, again logging the first on-quarter drop in a year. And the reason behind this was seen in an increase in mortgage loans that was lower than the previous quarter. The Bank of Korea explained that a decrease in the supply of policy loans and housing transactions around the end of last year affected housing loans in the first quarter. It also commented on the country's ongoing issue of household debt to GDP ratio, saying that it has seen a trend of it falling annually in 2022 and 2023, and expects the trend to continue in the first quarter of this year. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The South Korean government will carry out safety inspections on certain items bought online directly from overseas platforms, such as China's Temu, by having relevant ministries purchase them. Officials from the Office for Government Policy Coordination said Tuesday that relevant ministries will each buy and inspect designated items that are seeing a sharp increase in consumption or are deemed hazardous. If the items are considered dangerous, the government will request a suspension of sales and inform consumers. This comes after the government scrapped its new policy to ban certain goods bought directly overseas without the Korea certification safety mark due to backlash from the public. One of the best-known alcohol products of South Korea, soju, is steadily making a bigger name for itself, not just here, but in overseas markets. This time, the focus is on a more expensive type of the drink set to hit the global market. Our Lee Soo-jin takes us inside a local distillery to find out why.
The buzz is in the bottle, and at this local distillery, it's a distilled soju buzz.
From France's champagne to Mexico's tequila, there are countries that have their signature alcohol products. For South Korea, it's soju, which has been making a name for itself worldwide.
The value of soju exports surpassed the $100 million mark for the first time in 10 years in 2023. But what's behind its growing global popularity?
I think it was in K-dramas. Like, it's really good, and like they have different flavors as well.
I had heard a lot about it through word of mouth. Like, my friend that I'm here with and my sister are very into the Korean culture.
There are two main methods for producing soju, one that makes distilled soju, considered to be a more traditional variety, and the other is diluted soju, which is more commercially available in the famous green-tinted bottles. But local companies believe that it's a lesser-known distilled soju that will drive exports in the future because of its higher quality.
We're currently exporting to 25 different countries and planning to focus on expanding these because we believe that demand for premium distilled alcohol will continue growing.
One of the reasons causing the difference in quality is the type of raw ingredients that are used. Diluted soju is often made from imported tapioca, which is cheaper than distilled soju's locally produced rice that's steamed under pressure before undergoing 2 rounds of fermentation. And once the fermentation processes are completed, the distillation process is carried out, just once for distilled soju. On the other hand, diluted soju is made from a concentrate that has been distilled several times to increase the alcohol content. While higher alcohol content means that more soju can be produced from the concentrate, the numerous distillations cause it to lose its natural flavor, making the addition of artificial sweeteners necessary, unlike distilled soju. And here, the quality is further enhanced by preserving the soju in traditional earthenwares for 3 months to maximize the flavor. With local distilleries like this targeting consumer behavior that's shifting to rank quality above price, distilled soju and its traditional processing methods are expected to gain more recognition worldwide. 이수진, Arirang News.
There was summer-like heat in western regions today, including Seoul. However, the situation was a little different in eastern parts of the country due to easterly winds flowing in. In Gangneung and Pohang, it was below 20 degrees. Tomorrow will be a bit different as the wind direction changes. High temperatures are expected in eastern regions. In the middle of the day, summer-like heat is expected with Daegu and Gangneung at 29 degrees Celsius. Dry weather advisories have been in place in mountainous areas of Jeju Island for 5 days. As the atmosphere is still dry, please take extra precautions against wildfires. Tomorrow's Seoul and Gwangju will start off at 16 degrees. It will move up to 24 in Busan, Jeju, 23 degrees. On the weekend, rain will begin in various parts of the country, including Seoul. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That is Newscenter for tonight. Thanks for watching. A panel session coming up.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
한국에 오면 먹어야죠.
먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
The world around us is constantly evolving, and AI remains at the forefront of technological innovation. To ensure the world's safe use of AI while supporting rapid technological progress, the AI Seoul Summit kicked off today, co-hosted by South Korea and the UK. Building on the legacy of the world's first major AI safety summit held last year in Britain, the two countries aim to deliver concrete agreements on global AI governance. On this edition of Within the Frame, we look into the AI Seoul Summit, its opportunities and challenges, focusing on AI safety and regulation. For that, joining me in the studio is attorney An Jun-sung, who formerly served as a research fellow at the Korea Information Society Development Institute. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
We also have Helen Margetts, Professor of Society and the Internet at the Oxford Internet Institute at the University of Oxford, joining us virtually from London. She's also the Public Policy Director at Alan Turing Institute. It's so great to have you on our show.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, Dr. An, let's kick things off with you. First, give us a snapshot of the AI Seoul Summit and the significance of it being held here, right here in Seoul.
Okay, the AI Seoul Summit consists of two sessions. Today is the first session, which is the online conference summit among the several world leaders, including UK Minister, Prime Minister, and then G7 leaders, right? And tomorrow is the second session, which is the in-person conference among the digital ministry and the AI expert from the participant country. The significance of the AI Seoul Summit is that it's the follow-up to the first, the AI Safety Summit, which was held in UK last November, and which was basically focused on the AI safety issues and has not reached much agreement at that time. So we'll try to follow up the issues. Now we have three topics to discuss this time: the AI safety and innovation and the inclusivity.
The presidential office expressed hopes that the summit will serve as a stepping stone for South Korea to become one of the G3 AI nations. So there's a lot of excitement surrounding that prospect. And the highlight of the summit will be, as you mentioned, the Leaders Summit, where leaders of the G7 countries, as well as Singapore and Australia, will be taking part in the session. In fact, will begin in just a few hours. Now, Professor Margetts, the first AI Safety Summit was held in England last November, where some 30 countries laid down a cooperative framework through the Bletchley Declaration. During the discussions, we witnessed fierce competition among countries to take the lead in devising AI regulations. What's behind the intense competition?
Well, there's actually something good behind the intense competition, which is the fact that everybody's talking about regulation. And if you think about the situation with AI, say about 5 years ago, there was far less discussion of regulation in far fewer countries. And in fact, there used to be this saying in Silicon Valley, the US innovates and the EU regulates. And that's where all the discussion about regulation was taking place. I don't think that mantra is very helpful. I think all countries should be thinking about regulation. So the first thing to say is I think that is a good thing. However, there's two other things to say about that. One is that it can't just be regulation. Any of the questions or challenges we have with AI safety will not just be dealt with by regulation. For example, we have an Online Safety Act in this country, which we've been talking about for 7 years before it became legislation. Regulation is quite a kind of clunky mechanism for tackling these kind of challenges. We also have to talk about standards, an area where South Korea has been very prominent. We have to think about frameworks and guidance for developing these technologies and the principles that underpin them. So there's a lot to think about there. And the other point to make is that we can't just think about it on a national scale. It's good that individual countries are talking about it, but we have to talk about it at the global level. We won't solve any of these challenges by just talking about it nationally. I was at the Bletchley Summit on the first day, and I attended a round table explicitly focused on this point about global regulation and cooperation. And I was very encouraged by the kind of consensus there was about the kind of things that should be done. The only thing is to note there is that there is also competition on the global scale. I counted, I think, 8 international organizations that were interested to take a lead here in this area of global regulation. And that's something that we've got to resolve because competition does work against collaboration.
So the AI technological race has now been extended to the sphere of regulations, and it seems imperative that countries take a comprehensive, inclusive, and balanced approach, although it'll be much easier said than done because, as you pointed out, it takes a lot more than just regulations. We also need standards, and we also need to reach a consensus on a global level. Now, Dr. An, the AI Safety Summit held in the UK, it marked the world's first major AI Safety Summit, so it has that significance. But as you briefly mentioned, the Bletchley Declaration failed to contain agreements on specific AI regulatory measures. Now, although the AI Seoul Summit is a mini summit going on the way to the second summit set to be held in France at the end of this year, do you expect some progress on this front here in Seoul?
Well, I think that the problem is the AI, the regulation about the global scale is that the individual level, the countries has not decided what to do yet. I mean, for at least for European side, I mean, the EU has passed the EU AI Act, so I think there's kind of front runner at this AI regulation, the platform. But however, that if you get the US have not passed any federal law regulating AI, they have an executive order, and then based on the how to use the, based on focus on the AI use in the government, not the private sector. So in Korean side, of course, that many countries, including Korea and many countries, has really still discussing, whether to regulate or what to regulate. And I think the point. I think point about the UK meeting and Seoul meeting is that the people get together, leaders get together, and try to discuss what to discuss. Because I think that because we don't even know what kind of implication about the regulation, because the technology is changing so fast. Because if we talk about 5 years ago, we're not going to talk about AI, revolution, because now we have ChatGPT using, you see the development very quickly, and then regulation is very often is lag behind the technological development. So you need to look at the prospect, proactively how to regulate it, and then I think the private sector they seems to accepting the regulation, but I think that they're inside. I think they want the guardrail, not the regulation. Basically, I think there's interest guardrail. So there's a big difference among the interest group. The government have different thinking, and the private sector like Google and Microsoft, even OpenAI, have different thought, and then in the individual user like me have different idea about what to do. So I think that we should get together and start talking. I think that's the point. The starting point for that's the point, right?
Meanwhile, Dr. Margetts, AI technology is progressing at a pace that governments struggle to keep up with. OpenAI unveiled its new model GPT-4o, while Google's DeepMind released updates to its chatbot Gemini. How do you see the current state of balance between AI innovation and regulation?
Yes, well, it is rather unbalanced. Most of the innovations that are coming out at the moment relate to large language models, like the ones you mentioned. And large language models are a particular sort of field of AI where these blanket changes can be announced almost without warning and then released into the wild, if you like, into society. And this is the first AI we've had where citizens can be using it directly themselves, directly interacting with the AI rather than through a platform. And that has quite profound implications for society. In almost every field of endeavor, there are potential implications for the way we do education, for example, or healthcare. There's exciting possibilities in terms of innovations, and then there's kind of things to be concerned about. The whole question of assessment in education, for example, is really challenged by the idea of widely available models like GPT. So this is going to be something that governments are going to have to think about, civil society is going to have to think about, and researchers like myself are thinking about all the time, because the companies, and there aren't very many of these companies, large language models is a very concentrated field. So we've got a small number of companies who are having this massive societal impact with the products they develop. They don't think too much about those implications when they kind of, when they produce the latest innovation. So that's really something that we're going to have to think about going forward, particularly in the public sector, because I think around in the UK it's around 25%, but I'm sure in Korea it's much higher. People in the public sector, public service professionals like emergency workers and social workers and teachers and nurses are using these technologies to a far greater extent than other kinds of AI. They're using it, they like it, they think it makes them more productive, they kind of trust what comes out of it, and they think they know how it works. That's what survey evidence is showing us. But also, they're receiving, only about a third of them feel like, of the people who use it in the public sector, feel like they're getting any kind of guidance in how to use it. And it feels like education and healthcare, that's going to be really important going forward, thinking about those standards and frameworks for how to use these technologies.
And staying with you, Professor Margetts, President Yoon and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak issued a joint opinion article in which they presented 3 major principles of global AI governance, namely AI innovation, safety, and inclusivity. Tell us more about this and your thoughts on where discussions on AI governance should be headed.
I'm really pleased to see this triad of words, because I think the worry is that when you just talk about safety, then there's a danger that you kind of, you make people think about deep fakes and financial fraud and scams and all the kind of dangers of AI. And it can make people kind of wonder what's good about it. Why are we introducing all this technology? Because they don't hear enough about the benefits. So that's one thing to be pointed out. I think it's great to have these 3 particular words, because in the past we've tended to think of a bit of a trade-off between innovation and safety, like safe innovation is boring innovation. But I don't think that's true at all. I think safety can and the kind of regulation you need to achieve safety can actually create a really secure launch pad for innovation and helping to develop innovations that people can trust and feel okay using. So I think that's important. And also the word inclusivity is really important, because after all, I think the architects of these models have huge dreams for how they might tackle inequality on a sort of global scale. And there's no doubt that they do offer people exciting opportunities. Somebody who doesn't really speak the language so well of the country they live in, perhaps has real problems getting into the labour market, can use these innovations to, say, produce a CV, a curriculum vitae, just as good as the next person, or to reskill, to give themselves more labour mobility. There's all sorts of possibilities. But also remember that you can't run most of these models on a phone. Many people across the world only have a phone. They don't have the other devices that you need to run language models on. So they're not going to get the same benefits. And to tackle that question of inclusivity is also going to need innovation. It's going to need innovation to get these things running, consuming less resources, and it being possible to run them on less powerful devices. So these 3 words, they're good. They all go together. And they all kind of feed into each other. And I think thinking about all 3 of them is very helpful.
So achieving inclusive, collaborative, and sustainable AI governance is crucial for many reasons, some of which include ensuring ethical development and use of AI, mitigating harms and risks on humanity, and preventing a regulatory race to the bottom as well. And for such reasons, Dr. An, South Korea has also been making continuous efforts to establish its own AI regulatory framework. In 2019, it announced a national strategy for AI, and last year it also unveiled the Digital Bill of Rights. But it still lacks the Basic Act for AI. What discussions are being made about this?
Yeah, that's a very important question to the Korean administration and Korean government at this time, because I think the main issue, there's two main issues. First one is the nature of AI. How can you define AI? Each country might end up with different definition of AI, and the technology also changing very fast. So I think that what to regulate is important, and then also there's the scope of regulation. For example, in European case, EU AI is regulate on the use, the application level, and then there's some people in Korea, they say we should regulate on the development side. But interestingly, even EU AI Act have a certain prohibited use, like a level 1 use AI system is prohibited from the development stage. So it's very important to government to decide how much. I guess that have agreed on direction. Well, not only direction, the degree of regulation is that you want to go development level or application level, and how we're going to use level. So you have to find out consensus on the stakeholders and how to, where to regulate it. And that's the very the tough question to government have to handle it, because that each stakeholder have different view on issues. And if the developers, do not want the regulation on development side, and also if the user or the government sector, well, you want to get development side for security from the development side. That's kind of somehow conflicting each other. So you need to really kind of get consensus on in Korea, and how and the direction also, and then how much you want to regulate it. I think that's the one you have to discuss it. Yeah.
So coming up, devising with a comprehensive Basic Act for AI to regulate artificial intelligence. Certainly, it won't be a walk in the park, as you mentioned. It's a very complex process. We need to consider so many things, including what to regulate, starting with what to regulate, and also on what level and on what scale, which is probably why related bills are still stuck in limbo at the National Assembly, right?
Yeah, actually, maybe a quick comment. Why is it important of the definition of AI? You think about it. What is the AI to you? If you look at you're using the electronic device you're using on a daily basis, most things already have AI function. So it depends on how you define AI, the regulatory framework, and anything can be AI. Your cell phone, your electronic vehicle, everything can be AI. So that's the really big question to answer. Yeah.
Right. AI has already permeated into our everyday lives. Now, Professor Margetts, the European Union has approved the world's first comprehensive set of AI regulatory ground rules, while the Council of Europe adopted the first binding international AI treaty. The U.S. has unveiled the AI Bill of Rights, outlining a set of principles for the responsible use of AI. Tell us more about the regulation frameworks set by the world's AI leaders.
Sure. Well, the EU AI Act is no doubt it's a really sort of landmark piece of legislation because it has this centralized approach to regulating AI. I think one important point to note here is that AI is both a horizontal technology, in that it gets into everything. It has the possibility to get into every market, every sector of society. But it's also a vertical technology, so it has quite distinct implications in individual sectors. And it may be that sectoral regulations can be adapted to cope with AI, for example, in education or financial services or democratic regulation, for example. So you've got these horizontal and vertical things going on at the same time. The EU takes a horizontal approach where it thinks about regulating the AI itself and how it might be used kind of anywhere in any market. And there's no doubt you do need that. And for example, when it comes to generative AI and large language models, most countries have sort of separated that out as something that needs regulation sort of by itself at the center with this horizontal approach. But you do also need the vertical consideration. So the UK, for example, it looks like it doesn't have any new regulation for AI, and it doesn't. But it is taking this sectoral approach where it thinks about existing regulations in a sector like education or financial services or competitions and markets, and kind of thinks about how regulations might need adapting for AI. I think in the end, you need both approaches. You need that sort of centralized horizontal approach, and you also need to think about different sectors, different markets, different areas of society. So I think you will over time see a bit of convergence, but there's no doubt that the EU legislation stands out at the moment as this kind of landmark, this landmark set of rules and laws. I would just add one other thing about the kind of sectoral approach, just to illustrate what I mean. I mean, if you think about democracy and you think about elections, half the world's population is voting this year in elections. That's a particular area where there are concerns about large language models and how they might be used to turbocharge online harms like abuse and intimidation, and also misinformation and so on. And that's an area that perhaps needs specific thinking about. But you might not be able to do that with this kind of centralized law. You might have to think about the individual organizations involved in electoral regulation, those organizations involved in the administration of elections and the regulation of political advertising and the use of people's personal information and so on. So there's a lot of kind of more vertical things to think about there. And I think it's a good illustration of how you do need both approaches in the end.
All right, and before we let you go, Dr. An, what's called a Digital Society Initiative, jointly led by Korea and the OECD, will also kick off this week to discuss AI regulation as well as various digital technologies. Tell us a bit about this, as well as your prospects for Korea's ambition to lead global discussions on AI safety.
Well, the Digital Society itself basically will try to provide the policy platform, international policy platform, to discuss the AI issues, right? So among the OECD members. So I think the problem here is that Korea is a leader of AI technology or AI regulation. that you have to ask yourself. And what in terms of technology, well, you can have a semiconductor industry. Also, there's a software and hardware sector. But if you look at the software side, it's really quite behind the other, the American, U.S. companies, right? And so I guess that if you want to be the leading any, global, policy forum, something, any platform, you have to get something advanced than others. Means that if you have to, I think we need to get past the law first. And then we're going to share our experience and knowledge. We develop this, we introduce this law. There was the, pro and cons of the law, and maybe you like to advise you what to do and what not to do, right? So I guess I really need to push on for the National Assembly should pass the law, the next, the session, so that we can discuss it, and maybe can change it in the way, in the way going way. You can change it, update it, revise it. We cannot make a perfect law, but we can try to revise it, make it better. So I guess that's more effective, so that we can share our experience and knowledge with other countries. In that way we can secure getting the global leadership on the AI regulatory realm. Right.
All right, we'll leave it there tonight, but discussions will continue as France is set to host the second round of AI Safety Summit this November, and we'll be sure to watch closely if further progress is made. Thank you so much, Dr. An and Professor Margetts, for sharing your valuable insights.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow to join our conversation. Goodbye for now.